You're the reason my son is gone." She spat the words like poison. "This never would have happened if he hadn't taken your bike." I hate even repeating that sentence out loud. And as much as it twists something deep in my chest to admit it, there's a part of me that believes he brought the ending on himself, an admission that still keeps me staring at the ceiling some nights. But I am not carrying guilt. Not now. Not ever. I know exactly where my hands were that day. And more importantly, what they never touched. This whole disaster didn't begin with rage or revenge. It began with a coincidence. I was bored that Saturday, killing time beneath the harsh fluorescent buzz of a weekend auction warehouse. The place smelled like dust and motor oil, the usual graveyard for old furniture and forgotten machinery. I wasn't there for anything specific, just passing time. Then they rolled it out. A Harley, chrome polished so bright it seemed almost alive, gleaming like it already understood the kind of chaos it would eventually bring into people's lives. I didn't need another vehicle. I hadn't even planned to bid. Still, when the auctioneer called for offers, I lifted my paddle. Welcome Tummy Channel. If you enjoy top-tier HOA drama, make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss what happens next. When I rode that Harley back into the neighborhood later that afternoon, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Curtains twitched, front doors cracked open. People stared as I had just paraded some mythical beast down a quiet suburban street. The engine wasn't loud, just a low, steady rumble. Controlled, respectful. Nothing like the roaring monster they'd already imagined in their heads. I parked it carefully in my driveway, shut it down, and wiped my hands with the quiet sense of satisfaction. That's when I heard footsteps rushing toward me. Billy, Karen's son. Same sharp eyes she had. Same sense of entitlement. Just younger and far less polished about hiding it. He congratulated me, but his jaw stayed tight the entire time. After a moment, he admitted he'd been at the auction too. "That bike was supposed to be mine," he said. Apparently, he'd been saving for months, maybe longer, picturing himself riding it, planning exactly how it would look parked outside his house. I'd outbid him by seconds. That single moment clearly cracked something inside him. He forced a laugh that didn't land right and began circling the Harley, stepping closer than necessary. His fingers hovered just above the chrome, like he already considered it his property. He started asking questions that weren't really questions at all. "How fast does it run? How much did you pay? You even ride much?" I answered politely. At that point, he was just another disappointed bidder, nothing more than someone licking his wounds. He eventually walked off, but the glance he threw over his shoulder wasn't frustration. It was a calculation. Before we go deeper into what happened next, tell us in the comments where you're watching the story from, what country, what city. I'm curious how far this mess has traveled. 3 days after the Harley became neighborhood gossip, Karen finally made her appearance. She came off her porch like a storm cloud, armed with a clipboard. No greeting. No pleasantries. She announced my name as if it left a bad taste in her mouth, then pointed directly at the motorcycle as if it were actively contaminating her lawn. According to her, motorcycles violated community harmony, disrupted the visual balance of the neighborhood, created unacceptable noise risks, and broke several HOA regulations. She quoted from memory but never actually showed. I asked politely to see the written rules. She gave me a thin smile and said, "A president didn't need to justify herself." The timing wasn't subtle. Across the street, Billy stood pretending to scroll through his phone while clearly listening every word. That's when everything clicked into place. The auction, the looks, the sudden enforcement of policies that hadn't existed the week before. I told Karen the Harley was fully registered, insured, inspected, and legally parked. She dismissed that with a wave of her hand. Then she promised escalating consequences, fines, notices, hearings. She sounded almost excited saying it, like she'd practiced the speech in front of a mirror. From that day forward, the harassment became routine. Unsigned warning slips started appearing on my door. Anonymous complaints accused me of revving the engine at dawn on mornings when I wasn't even in town. One night, someone loosened the protective cover, leaving the leather seat exposed to a heavy rainstorm. Karen denied involvement in everything while casually suggesting she could make the problem stop if I cooperated. Cooperate, in her terms, meant selling the Harley, preferably to someone nearby, preferably to her son. Refused, calmly, every single time. That only seemed to sharpen her determination. She scheduled an HOA meeting centered around dangerous machinery and used my bike as the main example in a presentation. Neighbors, who barely knew me, nodded along, clearly afraid of becoming her next project. Billy tried a different approach. Soon after, friendly, almost casual, he offered to buy the Harley at a price so low it bordered on insulting. Bikes, sitting unused, can lead to accidents, he said with a smile that never reached his eyes. That's when I started documenting everything: photos, dates, recordings. Karen noticed the camera and eased off, just slightly switching tactics again. Instead of doorstep confrontations, she began sending certified letters. Each one is more aggressive than the last. Her strategy was simple: wear me down until I gave up. She wanted exhaustion to do what intimidation hadn't. Isolation, pressure, and constant irritation until surrender felt easier than resistance. What she never understood was that pressure doesn't move in only one direction. Every step she took tightened something around her as well. A net she couldn't see, thread by thread, quietly, patiently, waiting for the moment real weight would fall and snap it tight without mercy. Eventually, Saturday arrived, wrapped in calm that felt almost staged. The morning was quiet, too quiet. I washed the Harley myself, slow and deliberate, letting soap run across the chrome, while sunlight climbed higher above the rooftops. It grounded me, steady, almost meditative, like polishing a prize Karen still couldn't take. When I finished, I left it outside to dry, exactly where it always sat, fully visible from half the street. Then I went inside, showered, made coffee, wasted time scrolling through nothing important. When I stepped back outside, something immediately felt wrong. The empty space where the bike should have been looked unnatural, like a missing tooth your tongue keeps returning to without thinking. I walked around once, then again. My chest tightened. The Harley was gone. I didn't panic right away. I checked behind the house, along the curb, even halfway down the block, hoping maybe it had been towed for some invented violation Karen had pushed through. Neighbors avoided eye contact. Finally, one older man muttered that he'd seen Billy earlier standing near the motorcycle with the helmet in his hand. Another neighbor mentioned hearing an engine roar off down the street. Loud, unsteady, unfamiliar. That was the moment the calm finally broke. Still, I didn't call the police immediately. Something told me to confirm what I already suspected. I pulled up the CCTV footage. Frame by frame, the truth crawled into view. Billy walked up as he belonged there. He scanned the street quickly, crouched beside the bike, no keys, just exposed wires. He hotwired it with reckless confidence, nearly tipped the Harley over when it finally started. Then he laughed, actually laughed. He sped away moments later, wobbling badly, revving far too high riding power he clearly didn't understand or respect. I went straight to Karen's house. No hesitation. She opened the door, already defensive, like she'd been expecting a confrontation. I told her her son had stolen my motorcycle. She exploded instantly, called me a liar, insisted Billy wasn't some criminal, just a misunderstood young man chasing his dreams. She told me I should give him time. The boy's experiment. Said I was cruel for denying him something that made him happy. While she kept talking, her phone rang. The color drained from her face. Mid-sentence. Hospital. Motorcycle crash. Severe injuries. We drove separately, but arrived within minutes of each other. Emergency lights painted the road in harsh red and blue flashes. The Harley lay twisted nearby, metal bent open like it had been torn apart by force. Barely recognizable. Billy was on a stretcher, covered in blood, barely conscious. Paramedics moved fast, urgent, focused, worried. Karen screamed his name and tried to push past them. I stood still, frozen, staring at what happens when entitlement meets horsepower without the skill to control it. Knowing, even then, that this moment would fracture everything that came after. Billy didn't survive the night. The doctor described the injuries as catastrophic. Internal trauma layered over shattered bones. Speed multiplied by inexperience. By morning, everyone on the street knew. By noon, Karen decided her grief needed someone to blame. She chose me. She claimed I had tempted her son. Said owning the Harley within his sight was provocation. Argued that responsibility followed possession. Before funeral arrangements were even finished, she filed a lawsuit waving old HOA notices like sacred evidence. Court exposed everything she'd tried to bury. My footage, her threats, forged warnings. Neighbors finally spoke once fear loosened its grip. The judge listened patiently while Karen unraveled her own story, interrupting herself, contradicting timelines, and accusing people who hadn't even been present. Billy's past surfaced quietly. Unpaid citations, prior theft complaints, reckless behavior. The hot wiring mattered. Consent mattered. Ownership mattered. Tragedy didn't erase facts. The case collapsed under its own weight. Karen wasn't jailed, but the ruling stripped her authority completely. She lost her HOA presidency, faced civil penalties, was ordered to pay damages she couldn't avoid. Her reputation shattered faster than the motorcycle ever had. Neighbors stopped looking away. This time, they looked directly at her, finally seeing the cost of unchecked control. I didn't celebrate. I focused on repairing what I could inside myself. I sold the wreckage. The Harley never came back, but something else did. Peace, accountability, silence where intimidation used to live. Karen withdrew from everything. Smaller now, avoided, no longer feared. Her influence had always depended on noise, and the court took that away. Some nights, I still hear that engine in my head. That first calm ride home before envy twisted into obsession. I know I didn't cause the choice Billy made. I know grief doesn't rewrite the truth. This wasn't revenge. It was a consequence arriving exactly when it was due, unmoved by excuses. The end. Like and subscribe for more HOA showdowns like this. Do you think she received what she deserved? Tell me in the comments below.